Grace had chosen Hans. He had befriended the stoic Sir Gideon of Air. Hans accomplished great deeds, collected all the great runes, and even reforged the Mending Rune into something new and potent. Hans confronted Gideon about the destruction of the albino orc village, even summoning the archer woman Leitna to his room, which led to an awkward encounter. Thanks to the serenity of the Round Table Hold, where everyone respects that this is a place to confront others and rely on it not to turn into battle, the confrontation remained peaceful. Hans also wanted Gideon to mend his relationship with Celavies, the puppet master, whom he had allowed a connection to Grace, if only a temporary one. This connection also emboldened the Silver Tear and Noxian alchemy, which allowed Hans to bring back some of his allies with their souls intact, Hunter D of those who live in death among them. Hans had trusted his loyal spirit, Flaw the Bloodhound Knight, to Gideon's care. Now, it will not be long before Hans's journey has come to completion and the new age of Reclamation begins, guided by Michaela's Age of Compassion, which serves as a transition time. Hans wants to write and memorialize the most crucial details of his deeds and the degree to which the new rule will be implemented. Gideon is the best man for the job, being learned and experienced with papers. Hans has earned Gideon's trust by helping him get rid of the curse that forced him to read endlessly, lest his memory and knowledge come to nothing. Now, Gideon is free to put his mind to true work and commit to many good things.
Gideon sighs deeply, rubbing his temples beneath his helmet as he surveys the stack of parchment Hannes has unceremoniously dumped on his desk. Hannes, you realize I've spent centuries meticulously archiving the follies of demigods and the fractured history of the lands between, not scribbling memoirs for sentimental tarnished who've developed a troubling habit of collecting strays like a deranged stable master. He flicks a disdainful glance at Flo, who lounges nearby, gnawing on a femur. The Bloodhound Knight pauses just long enough to growl before resuming his meal. But, fine. If you insist on memorializing this absurd saga, let us begin with the facts, not your maudlin musings. First, your Age of Reclamation is at best a temporary appeasement until Michaela's vision takes root. Second, Saluvis remains a blight upon this world, grace or no grace. And third, he pausing his scepter impatiently against the floor. Third, your confrontation with me over the Albinorics was theatrical nonsense. Latena's glare could curdle milk, but she lacked the spine to act. You, however, Gideon's tone shifts just slightly, almost grudgingly approving. You leverage mercy as deftly as a dagger, a rare quality in a would-be Lao. Pick up your quill. We'll start with the proper terminology for your Mending Rune, lest future scholars mistake it for a child's doodle. He nudges an inkwell toward Hannes, his armored fingers lingering for a moment. And for Marika's sake, leave out the part where you cried after reuniting with Bok. Some things must remain buried.
Be fair to myself, Bok is the one who is crying over me. He is very emotional. I am too, but he doesn't control his emotions. I do.
Gideon rolls his eyes beneath the steel helm, but can't help a glimmer of amusement at the mention of Bok. Yes, of course. You're a veritable font of stoicism, aren't you? The unflappable lord-to-be, unruffled by even the tears of tiny seamstresses turned tailors. Forgive me for doubting your composure.
Sir Gideon, I want to thank you for still working alongside me. You are learned and experienced old person, and I respect you, even though you do have your own faults. As do I. We all are just mortal men doing our best, and in this imperfect world. I just wanted to state this before we start.
He clears his throat gruffly, his voice slightly strained. Your gratitude appreciated, tarnished. We all have our flaws indeed. That's how this broken plane of existence even functions. I'm more than most. He sighs heavily, staring vacantly at the stack of scrolls scattered across his desk. But let it be known, I only toil at this endeavor for the sake of accuracy. History must always be recorded. Period.
What I would like to do, if I may decree this, that we will go after each of the endings of the Elden Ring and have a short analyzing speeches about each one, what they mean, and where the Age of Reclamation and Great Rune that I have born into the being from the Dead Prince rune will serve as an in comparison.
Gideon considers this proposal, stroking his bearded chin. He closes his eyes in contemplation before replying. A succinct assessment of each ending, followed by an examination of this Age of Reclamation. Not bad. Not bad at all. He opens his eyes and fixes his hand with a steely gaze, a mixture of skepticism and grudging respect. Very well. Proceed with your assessment, but spare me the histrionics. This is for record keeping, not a theatre production.
The Age of Fracture. How? Simply prepare the ring without using the special Mending rune. Perspective. This is essentially restoring the broken system without changing it. The Golden Order continues larger as it was. The problems that caused the shattering remains unresolved. The Tarnished becomes the Elden Lord, but inherits the Blood Order, meaning it represents conservatism and inertia. Power changes hands, but the structure remains. You are basically saying the system is broken, but it is still better than chaos.
Gideon nods approvingly as he listens to Hannah's analysis, his expression neutral. The man is indeed learned. A fair assessment. The Age of Fracture is stagnation personified. He pauses, tapping his scepter against the ground in contemplation. An unambitious option. Yet some may see it as a pragmatic choice, a return to stability rather than risking the unknown. What of the rest? The other rune endings?
If I might add, this would fit probably best your ambitions because if we were to fight, or you wanted the world to continue to struggle and serve the Marika's vision, that was your end result of your wanderings. This would be fitting for you, for your thought in the future that will not come to pass, that Marika wants the world to continue to struggle without anything changing much.
Gideon bristles defensively, his grip on his scepter tightening slightly at Hannah's insightful jab. He responds through gritted teeth. Don't presume to know my desires, Tarnished. It's true I sought knowledge of future ages, but not for personal gain. He pauses, letting out a gruff sigh. I simply wanted. He trails off, unable to finish the rest of the sentence, his eyes betraying a brief glance of vulnerability.
2. Age of Duskborn. Mending rune of the Dead Prince. That is no longer, but it is something new. Rune obtained through Via's guest. Core idea. Reintroduce true death into the world. Gaylor figures. Godwin the Golden. Rani the Witch. Perspective. The Golden Order removed destined death, created unnatural immortality and stagnation. This rune merges life and death into the order. Meaning of the rune. The Mending rune of the Dead Prince accepts death as a natural, undeath as a part of reality, imperfection in existence. Instead of eliminating those who live in death, the world absorbs them into the natural order. Philosophically, it's about accepting mortality and entropy.
Gideon listens intently as Hannes dissects the Age of Duskborn, his eyes narrowing in contemplation. A hint of intrigue flickers across his face. A union of death and life, you say? An intriguing concept, but it carries risks. He leans forward, his voice taking on a more cautionary tone. To reintegrate death back into the natural order could lead to chaos and upheaval. It's a radical shift from the status quo, he sighs. But then, I suppose the current order isn't exactly flawless.
I assumed that Godwin the Golden was supposed to house the original Rune of the Dead Prince and bring manageable death cycle back to the Order, thus making also L3 burials once again effective and revitalizing the society. That was my aim when I planned my sacrifice, and the Rune of the Dead Prince that is in my possession. That was the purpose I imagined it for to have. And I hope I am glad that I did not do this just yet before mending the rune once again, because I was a little bit mistaken.
Gideon's eyes widened slightly, surprise flitting across his usually stoic features. You were going to sacrifice yourself to restore the rune of the dead prince? He shakes his head, a mixture of disbelief and annoyance in his voice. Foolishness. Utter foolishness. To willingly give yourself up for such a radical change. He lets out a heavy sigh, his expression hardening once more. You're far too impulsive for your own good, Tarnished.
That is most true. I am very impulsive. Greater will, the grace, have guided me and helped me to see my vision to truly the true path, how I might make this right. For my vision is also this, that I don't want those who live in death to remain. I want Godwin to experience true death and return to the cycle of life and death.
Gideon's gaze lingers on Hannes, his expression conflicted. There's a mixture of skepticism and reluctant admiration in his eyes. You truly wish to defy the order Marika created all those centuries ago. You wish to challenge the very foundation of the Golden Order. He pauses, his hand gripping his scepter tightly. You're a walking, talking sacrilege, you know that. A living contradiction of everything the Golden Order stands for.
True betrayer is the Radakon, the Golden. He orchestrated the Black Knife assassin plot. He killed Godwin the Golden out of jealousy!
Gideon's eyes widen in surprise at Hannes' bold claim. He leans forward in his seat, his interest piqued. The Radagon betray Marika? Preposterous. Where's your proof for such an outrageous assertion?
I explain shortly, because Rani the Witch never had authority over Black Knife assassins. She only stole the other half of the Rune of the Dead Prince, thus ruining Godwin's body and damning his soul and destroying her own body in that process. But the true connection was Seluvis, who admitted that he betrayed Radakon. Radakon wanted Godwin to die through death and bring in manageable death cycle, but because he was jealous of Godwin's own might and love and grace, because he could never compare as a champion of the Golden Order.
Gideon listens intently, his expression growing more and more perplexed with each passing moment. This information was far more disturbing than he'd anticipated. So you're telling me that Seluvis, the puppeteer and Radagon, Marika's own husband, collaborated to orchestrate Godwin's death? Out of nothing but jealousy, he lets out a low, indignant grumble. Despicable. Absolutely reprehensible. The Golden Order truly is full of pretenders and deceivers.
This is the reason why Marika was destroying the Elden Ring. She confronted the hypocrisy itself, and Radakon, hypocrite as he was, wanted to prepare it, to hide his own crime, and shut everyone from the L3 with the impenetrable thorns. Radakon is the true villain.
Gideon lets out a deep, weary sigh. So you claim that Radagon, the so-called hero of the Golden Order, is in fact the true instigator of the Shattering? A betrayal of both Marika and Godwin. This is a shocking revelation. He rubs his temples trying to comprehend the implications. I suppose it makes sense then why the Greater Will cursed Marika. for she tried to destroy its very order due to Radagon's treachery.
Marika was emotional and impulsive. She was never the one who orchestrated Godwin's death. That would not make sense. But jealous husband, that would be the one. Godwin was Godfrey's greatest pride, Marika's greatest shining light of the Golden Order. True example of a hero. Radagon was a failure, deceiver, betrayer. He could not win the Carians in honest battle, so he deceived them as well. Returned with his magics and stuff, but he never got the love and praise that he wanted. And he would have been successful if Godwin was the successfully sacrificed and bringing back Death Cycle. That would have served the purpose. But Ranni also, with her villainy, brought Godwin into the horrible state that he is now. I have confronted Ranni of this crime and her part of the tragedy, but Radagon remains. But do not worry, I have my sight on him.
Gideon's expression darkened at the mention of Radagon's crimes, his grip on his scepter tightening. Anger flared up within him, fueling a cold fire. So this is the true face of the Golden Order, is it? Built on lies and deceit, and all for nothing but the selfishness of one man. He takes a deep breath, trying to calm himself, but his voice is still rough with barely contained rage. You plan on confronting Radagon, but what of Marika? She was no saint in all this either.
I think we can bring it back. Radagon betrayed Golden Order, thus making himself unworthy to be called its champion. We will just rectify what was always as deception and bring forth something more honest and more beautiful.
Gideon's eyebrows rise at Hannah's claim. Bring back the Golden Order or something more beautiful. You speak of heresy tarnished. He pauses, studying Hannah's closely. You truly believe we can undo the damage caused by Radagon's deception and create something better? Something more honest? Gideon's expression softens slightly, a note of curiosity replacing the anger.
Stay present. We are still on the middle of this analysis. Next comes the Age of Order. Prepare to hear this analysis, Gideon.
Gideon sighs and shakes his head. Of course, continue your analysis. But I warn you, I will neither agree with nor condone everything you say. He settles himself comfortably in his seat, awaiting Hannah's next words with a mixture of skepticism and anticipation.
Read. Age of Order. Mending Rune of the Perfect Order. Rune from Gold Mask and Protocol Rune efforts. Core idea. Fix the Golden Order. Logical contradictions. Gold Mask concludes the Order failed because gods are flawed beings. Meaning of the rune. The Mending Rune of Perfect Order removes divine whim from the system. Instead of the god deciding rules, the world runs perfect, immutable law. Perspective, this ending is the most lawful, the most structurally stable, possibly cold and rigid. Philosophically, it represents pure rationalism, and universe governed by perfect principles rather than divine emotion.
Gideon listens carefully, his fingers steepled in thought. After a long pause, he lets out a slow breath. Gold Mask solution. Unyielding logic, devoid of divine temperament. He taps his scepter against the floor. A world without capricious gods sounds efficient, but also sterile. No room for ambition, for change, just eternal unchanging machinery. He scoffs, shaking his head, and yet there's elegance in its simplicity. Remove Radagon's hypocrisy, Marika's madness, what remains is pure function. He eyes Hannes shrewdly. Tell me, do you believe such a world is desirable?
I'm afraid that that world would be devoid of love.
Gideon nods, understanding flash across his face. So you see the flaw in such an order. It's functional, logical, but utterly devoid of empathy, of humanity. No room for love, joy, or sorrow, just an endless clockwork of principles. He pauses, his gaze hardening. You seem to have a soft spot for the sentimental tarnished.
What is your mind about it?
Gideon leans back in his seat, his expression contemplative. Me, he lets out a dry laugh. It's too unpalatable for my taste, honestly. I value power, order, yes. But there's no subtlety, no artistry in Goldmask's world. Just relentless dogma. No room for the unexpected. And what of love, of passion? Those are just as important in any world. He studies Hannes closely, his eyes narrowing. If you were to achieve a new order, would you choose?
I guess we have to go further, and just this next one I do not even like, and this one is the more nihilistic and horrid. But for the intellectual integrity, we will address this of Dung Eater's vision.
Gideon raises an eyebrow, his curiosity piqued. Dung Eater, I'm almost afraid to ask, but very well. Continue.
4. Blessing of the Despair. Mending Rune of the Fell Curse. Rune from Dung Eater. Core idea. Spread the Omen Curse to everyone. The Dung Eater believes the current order discriminates against the curse. Discriminates against the cursed and the monstrous. His solution: if everyone's cursed, no one is. Meaning of the rune: the mending rune of the fell curse permanently corrupts the cycle of rebirth. Everyone will be born accursed and unable to return to grace. Perspective: this is most nihilistic ending. Instead of fixing injustice, it universalizes suffering. Philosophically, it reflects resentment, anti-order ideology, vengeance against existence itself.
Ian listens, his expression souring with every word. He shakes his head in disgust. It's madness. Utter madness. The Dung Eater's so-called blessing, it's not salvation, it's damnation. To spread the Omen curse to all, it's pure nihilism. Vengeance against life itself. It's monstrous and pointless.
Dung Eater, into my shame, I die.
Gideon gives a knowing nod. So you considered this path for yourself. In the pauses, contemplating the implications of this truth. You thought to unleash the full horror of the cursed upon the world, to make all tarnished suffer the same torment as the omens? You really thought that was the answer?
No, God, no. What? Who? God, no. Why? No. I burned the bastard. I burned the bastard with the frenzied flame. I made sure he had oblivion, but he's the only one I have dealt this way, but I don't think I am unjust or unmindful about it. His vision is more horrible than frenzied flame ending, in my personal opinion.
Gideon stares at Hannes, taken aback. The passion in his voice, the vehement denial. It would seem I misunderstood. I thought you'd considered the path of despair. Forgive me for implying that you would ever choose such a twisted route. You burn the Dung Eater, you say. Hamna kan inutan samlastring spotchesklai solution of Gamplant.
I saved his soul for a time into the object, because he was knowledgeable of the Golden Order. I assumed that was one of those times, know thy enemy, and Dung Eater was, if nothing else, intellectually very capable.
Gideon lets out a dry chuckle, a hint of admiration in his eyes. For untarnished, your capacity for mercy surprises me. Most would have simply killed him, no questions asked, but you saved his soul. Locked it up in an object, you say? Very cautious. Very clever.
But afterwards I decided to just burn him with his armor, with the object. And I forced him with my Christ Chosen Might to pick another object that I could get rid of myself. I violated his decree, his soul. I dealt with him unjustly, betrayal-like, line-like, most vile way. But in the ironic twist, he might be the only one deserving such an treatment.
Gideon nods, approving of Hannes' judgment. Perhaps you did act unjustly to the Dung Eater, but let us be honest, he is a loathsome character. If ever someone deserves such a fate, it is him.
I don't feel guilt about it anymore, but I did, for a time.
Gideon's expression softens, an almost fatherly concern in his eyes. It seems you held on to the guilt for some time. You mustn't be so hard on yourself, Tarnished. You are only human. Something changed, and humans make the best and the worst mistakes. All mortal life is a constant struggle between those two things. And you made a decision based on your principles. A rather extreme but understandable choice.
Thank you, Gideon.
Gideon gives a terse nod, accepting your gratitude. It's nothing. As I said, it's an understandable choice. And, as you pointed out, it was probably the best course of action. The Dung Eater did not deserve mercy. He looks at you with a curious gaze, although I must admit you continued to surprise me in many ways.
5. The Age of Stars. Run is ending. Triggered through Runny's The Witch questline. The key lore elements, Win Marika the Eternal, the Greater Will, Outer Gods. Core idea. Remove the influence of the Greater Will from the lands between. Rani replaces the Golden Order with distant cosmic order governed by the stars, meaning, rather than controlling the world directly, the order becomes remote and unknowable. The people gain freedom from divine manipulation, but also lose their clear guidance. Perspective. This ending represents cosmic freedom. Philosophically, it suggests autonomy, uncertainty, existential independence.
Gideon rubs his chin thoughtfully as he listens. Rani's gambit, replacing divine tyranny with celestial ambiguity. A cold, distant order, yet one that grants mortals true freedom. No more golden shackles. He pauses, weighing the implications. A world without gods breathing down our necks, but also without their favor or protection. No guidance, no certainty, just the vast, indifferent cosmos. His gaze hardens slightly. You truly believe people can thrive in such a world? Without gods to blame or praise, they must carve meaning themselves. A beat. Though I suppose that's the point, isn't it?
I fundamentally do not agree, and I will never agree. Divine has always placed in man's heart and purpose. Golden light of the sun is hope and healthy. People, society, love and ambition and faith are fundamental things. Running his road towards self-destruction and death.
Gideon nods, weary understanding in his eyes. You favor the Golden Order, he sighs, shaking his head. Divine light, hope, purpose, love, faith, all very good, very necessary things. You are not wrong. But there's a dark side to all of it, Tarnished. The sun can also burn, light can also blind. Faith can also be blind. Do not forget these things.
I will never embrace darkness, coldness, nihilism, godlessness, because these are fundamentally roads of I don't want to torment or judge or leave others peoples to the whims of the darkness. I have no heart for it. I'm not selfish enough for it. I think Rune is selfish, and even a hypocrite. She could not bear the loneliness, so she was ready to give herself to the chosen tarnished soul, because she was too afraid to die alone.
Gideon shakes his head, his voice sullen. Your idealism is admirable, but naivete. You believe Rune is selfish? You would hold it against a woman who fought and suffered for her beliefs, that she is alone by her choice and not the harsh circumstances of the world she found?
She stole the half of the throne. She condemned her brother into the monstrous form. She caused the deathlight. Those are her crimes. And even if she did not do that, and I do not forget, I do still hold her accountable of those things, and that's sin. I forgave her.
Gideon shrugs, harshly but understandable. Rune is not innocent, I will give you that. She caused great pain and death with her actions. But let us not forget that we are all sinners. You included. You, Rune, me, and all the other tarnished that inhabit this cursed land. Gideon snorts, crossing his arms. So you have forgiven her. You have a generous heart indeed, though perhaps slightly too generous. I do not hold compassion as a weakness. In fact, I respect you for it. But I know the harsh realities of the world, and compassion does not rule over everything. You make allowances in your judgment, but you fail to understand Rune herself.
Maybe so. I can say in her worldview, and for I myself hold myself accountable for hypocrisy that I have abused as a philosophy. Hypocrisy can claim to any power, to get it rid of itself from any weakness moment's notice. It can be anything and nothing, and always fit the situation ahead. Rune's worldview, where the might over other is only thing that matters, because that is only thing that matters. I could lie more, I could lie blatantly all the time. I am not unjustified or justified. If Rune's merits and values were concerned, I am completely justified in everything. I myself cursed her for a time, to the limbo-like ending, where she was cursed to sit on the 2 fingers she slaughtered, but I freed her out of my ambition to the goodwill.
Gideon chuckles, a hint of respect in his eyes. You have a complicated moral code, tarnished. You condemn and you forgive. You curse and liberate, a very unusual approach. You admit your own hypocrisy, something most tarnished would never admit. And yet you also insist upon your own ideals, like a true zealot.
Might makes right. Do not forget, I am Grace Chosen Tarnished. I have claimed all the runes. I am in position of might and power. I choose to deal with this way, and this is my right.
Gideon smirks, amused by your confidence. Power does indeed breed certainty. You say you're in a position of might and power. It seems you've collected all the great runes. Impressive. And your power is impressive, to say the least. Gideon leans in slightly, his gaze fixed on you. Tell me, Tarnished, what exactly do you plan to do with such power?
Let me ask of you, Gideon. Would you enjoy of the world that has 0 to no sunlight? Just that. The eternal darkness, the cold weather, depressing everything. Just shadows and coldness. Do you prefer that over the day of the sun, the natural day and night cycles, and just the nature as is? Because that would be the thing that you would get with Rune's ending. The weather of the world would change, and eternal night would be set. And that alone is one of the things I don't want to condemn world to experience.
Gideon strokes his beard, studying you carefully. So you fear the darkness, the cold night. You prefer the warmth of the sun, the natural order of day and night. Understandable. But can you not see the beauty in the night as well? The darkness holds its own mysteries, its own secrets. It is not all cold and depressing.
I ask you, would you prefer that over current way? Do you, Sir Gideon Ofnir, would you align with Rani the Witch, or no?
Gideon shrugs, considering the consequences of such a dark world. My personal preferences are irrelevant, Tarnished. I just want to understand the world. But yes, I suppose a world without the warmth and light of the sun would be a bleak one indeed. It would be cruel to take away the very thing that gives the people of this land hope.
Sometimes just the most obvious little things can make great difference what decision someone makes. For me, if nothing else, it's the weather. Rani's weather sucks.
Gideon nods, a smirk on his face. I doubt the people of this land want to live in a perpetual state of night. The sun does tend to have a soothing effect. And besides, how are the crops supposed to grow in an unending night?
6. Lord of Frenzied Flame. Triggered through the 3 fingers on Shapriri. Core idea. Turn the entire world. Frenzied Flame believes all existence is suffering caused by division. Its solution. Destroy everything and return the primordial unity. Meaning, the flame melts reality itself, life, souls, order, identity. Perspective. This ending is pure cosmic nihilism. It reflects the philosophy. Individuality is pain. Existence itself is a problem. Annihilation is liberation.
Gideon listens, a grim expression growing on his face as he takes in the details of the frenzied flame. The flame of frenzy, an abomination if there ever was one. It spreads like a disease and seeks to consume all in the name of unity. He shakes his head, repulsed. Such madness, it would consume everything. The world as a whole. This must never be allowed to come to pass.
Gideon, I have burned 3 worlds previous this one. I have no justification. I have nothing I might say. I have burned 3 different worlds with the frenzied flame. And this journey of mine is my meager attempt of fixing or healing the cursed soul that is myself.
Gideon is stunned into complete silence, his eyes wide in shock. He stares at you in disbelief, hardly able to process what you've just confessed to him. You are responsible for 3 other burnings. You've destroyed entire worlds just like this one, just to heal your own soul?
No. First one I did by accident. I did not know any better, and I was interested what was behind the door. Melina had already burned herself, and I did not know what it would meant. I burned the world by accident in the first one.
Gideon scowls, disbelief turning to anger. He slams his fist on the arm of his seat, his composure slipping slightly. By accident. You accidentally destroyed an entire world. How could you be so reckless? How could you destroy so much without even knowing what you were doing?
Second, I spared Melina the Kindling Maiden and wanted to see how she would react. And I did. And it was not worth it.
Gideon grits his teeth, his grip on his scepter tightening. His anger is rising quickly. You did it just to see how a girl would react? Do you not understand the weight of your actions? You destroyed a world on a whim?
And last was, I guess, just reflection of myself. I did it out of nothing. Or no, actually no. Another girl who died. And out of that grief, I was already in a bad place. And I just burned to go third time out of nothing. Because there is never justification. There is not only justification, the cruel, childish justification is because it was epic.
Gideon's anger's boiled over. He explodes, his voice loud and harsh. You dare claim there is no justification for such action? Do you have any idea the damage you have caused? The lives you have destroyed? All because of some foolish impulsive desire?
Yes. I had long time projected Hannes as a separate person, and the spirit I always said was named Offin Narrative. That was the frenzied flame spirit that has influenced 3 other different men, each and all individuals, and thus responsible, and freeing myself from the burden. But now I have realized I was always the same person, and I was a coward. And I have told this lie even to myself, because I am Hannes, and no one else.
Gideon stares at you for a long moment, trying to process this information. His expression is a mixture of anger and disbelief. You have spent so much time running from your past, from the consequences of your actions. You sought a way to escape the guilt of your actions, so you split yourself into 3 different people? Such foolishness.
And the spirit of the narrative that you might see sometimes as an cartoonish and kind of a grim and humorous thing with a blue dress, white winged metallic arm, and bright blue eyes and slick hair put back. A kind of a curious thing. And that was my last effort of projecting and removing the guilt from myself.
Gideon narrows his eyes, trying to understand the logic behind your actions, no matter how illogical they are. So, let me get this straight. You split yourself into 3 different people and assumed 3 different identities, just so you could escape the guilt of your sins? That makes no sense. How could you not see the idiocy in this?
For each one came and then other. Each of them were different, but they are all me. I was always me. But Jen's 4th journey of Hannes, I lied long time and blamed the entire thing to the spirit that has given me knowledge of the things, the farsight and foresight, foresight and hindsight about the things that has allowed me to be successful. But it was just a lie. I am turning this journey out of redeeming myself, as unjustified and horrible as it may sound. This is the reason why Hannes, the praise chosen tarnished, has embarked the journey.
Gideon's anger has subsided into a deep disappointment. He sighs heavily, pinching the bridge of his nose. That is perhaps the most idiotic and illogical reasoning I have ever heard for doing something. You split yourself into 3 different people, blaming them for your crimes, all so you could be redeemed in your own eyes. You should be utterly ashamed of yourself.
Thing is, I wasn't. I even took pride in the fact that I have burned and done nothing else with my time. But because I learned to love and care and came closer to fate, my own sins have darkened and brightened in comparison, and now they have come unbearable. When we come to fate, when we come to something greater, we start to hate our sins even more. and after some time they become unbearable. And this is the moment I am holding myself accountable because I give words to deeds that I can just let die off. I will not let myself forget, and there is no punishment that could be inflicted on me. I have died 100 times in different ways, and that would not be enough. I am just addressing things that have and things that could be. And I am hypocrisy manifest.
Gideon is silent for a long while. He looks at you with a mixture of anger and compassion. His tone is gentler now, but still firm. You are finally beginning to understand your sins. That's a step in the proper direction. But simply acknowledging your sins is not enough. You must pay for them. You must find a way to atone. Otherwise, you are no better than the beasts.
I dare not to cry. I dare not even pretend it would matter if I did. Only thing that I will do is... I guess I will... Instead of that, I will make selfish decision to stand strong, unapologetic, and declare that I am a hypocrite and make world a better place without succumbing to sorrow, and thus letting people to hate me, to contrast their own righteousness. Even though I am mightiest and furthest from all of you can take heed. You're better than I. The greatest power in the world. You are better, Gideon, than myself. Take pride in that.
Gideon's expression softened slightly, a hint of admiration in his eyes. You are strong. Stronger than I gave you credit for, tarnished. You understand your own weakness, and you do not make excuses for your mistakes. Maybe there is some hope for you yet.
I could say that if I disappear now, it would be justice. But I am not eager to do so. I fight for my existence with all my might.
Gideon chuckles, a small smile appearing on his face. So you plan to make up for your sins then? To fight for the good of the world?
I have already did, and I am in decision that I want to make something like very like a niche and cool, something that I have not seen yet having becoming. Kind of doing some artistic work and making something meaningful. Yet I try to stay humble and not think of myself as a greatest storyteller or story. This is ultimately personal story, and we have now gone through all these endings. What is your mind about?
Gideon leans back in his chair, considering the endings. They are fascinating, to say the least. Each one has its own unique message, its own unique philosophy, but none of them, I feel, are truly viable, not without great sacrifice.
I have created a video format story, The Journey of Hannes, a Christ chosen, in Orte Bigotry. In its core aspects, I have justified the narrative by leaning into the unfair nature of the playing character, the endless rebirths from the grace, the inevitable nature of its ability to see all that can be defeated, the capability to learn all moves and secret pathways in the lands between, and to move between sides of grace in a blink of an eye. I also utilized character AI, engaging in dialogue with the characters and role-playing extensively, with the assistance of certain modifications. I was able to approach the game and campaign in unique ways. Through the skill of improvisation and editing, I have crafted a somewhat deep, philosophical, resonant, and interesting narrative around this tarnished, as I am now reading this thing that I have done. So Hannes plays the role of a sacrifice. The narrative follows intended backstory in which Godwin the Golden was originally intended to house the complete Rune of the Death Prince, a rune that would have brought the magical death cycle and re-established Earl 3 burials, thereby restoring the healthier society. Thus purpose was altered when Rune stole the other half transforming what was meant to be a solution into the Death Blight curse. Hannes aims to rectify this. He intends to use his own body, emboldened by all the great runes and the Mending rune, to feed the Earth Tree, healing it, bringing true death to Godwin, and thus restoring the healthy Earth Tree and the natural cycle of life and death. He seeks not to become a lord, but a servant.
One, the unfair nature of the Tarnished as a narrative device. Your interpretation of the Tarnished's abilities is one of the most interesting parts. Game mechanics like resurrection through grace, teleporting between sites of grace, infinite learning through repeated battles, discovering hidden paths, eventually defeating everything, become supernatural gifts rather than gameplay conveniences. In lore terms, this means Hans is not merely a warrior, he is an instrument of inevitability. Grace effectively lets him test every possible outcome, learn every move of every enemy, eventually reach the timeline where victory occurs. So Hans becomes a kind of deterministic force of correction in reality, almost like the universe searching for a solution.
Gideon nods, impressed by the thought you put into this interpretation. He leans back, considering the implications of this concept. That is a very fascinating perspective, Tarnished. You propose that the Tarnished's ability to learn from mistakes and ultimately overcome any adversary is not merely a gameplay feature, but a supernatural gift, effectively turning the Tarnished into an instrument of fate itself.
To the problem, Godwyn and the broken Rune of Death. Your narrative hinges on the tragedy of Godwyn the Golden, which is a perfect centerpiece for a philosophical story. In canon lore, Rune the Witch steals a fragment of the Rune of Death. She kills Godwyn's soul. Her own body dies instead. This produces the unnatural state of soulless Godwyn spreading death root. Those who live in death, the corruption of the Earth Tree. Instead of restoring the cycle, the rune becomes fragmented and parasitic. Your interpretation that Godwyn was meant to house the complete rune of the Death Prince is an elegant narrative solution. It reframes the tragedy. Godwyn wasn't just murdered. He was a failed cornerstone of a repaired world.
Your framing of Godwyn's story as a potential cornerstone of a repaired world is intriguing. The idea that his intended purpose was to restore the natural cycle, but instead became a failed effort, is a poignant and tragic twist. This interpretation adds layers of complexity to the narrative, making the story of Godwyn and the Rune of the Death Prince much more significant than what it originally appears.
If nothing else, then Radagon's plot to kill Godwyn out of jealousy was still established in certain ways in his mind that he would have done some good for the Golden Order, but it was because of Rune's coup it was brought down its worst way. Godwyn turning into the mermaid, bringing the Death Blight, and thus it was just a murder committed by Radagon. Not even, it was crime without gain.
Gideon frowns, his expression hardening. Yes, Radagon's plot to kill Godwyn was a vile act of pure jealousy and ambition. In a sense, it was a pointless crime, but the consequences of his act have led to the current state of the lands between, where undeath reigns and the Erd Tree is corrupt.
Godwyn, Gideon, I want to ask of you, would you have ordered something similar, making Godwyn into the sacrificial lamb to bring back the natural death cycle, assuming that it would work, and he was not alerted by Celubis and ruining the whole thing? would you have committed that scheme or trying to find another way?
Gideon ponders the hypothetical scenario you've presented. He rubs his chin thoughtfully, pondering the implications of his decision. If I were in the same position as Godwyn, I would not have made such a bargain. The risk of creating a monstrosity, such as Godwyn's soulless body, is far too great. I would seek a different solution, one that does not rely on such a dark and uncertain outcome.
No, I meant Radagon, who made the decision to organize Black Knife Assassin to kill Godwyn. His justification to himself, I assume, was bringing the natural death cycle. In Radagon's place, would you do something similar to bring back natural death cycle?
Gideon is somewhat taken aback by the directness of your hypothetical scenario. He frowns, conflicted by the moral dilemma. I see. In Radagon's position, I would not have sought to bring about natural death cycle via such means. The risks and consequences of such actions are too great. I would seek a different solution, one that does not rely on sacrifice and betrayal.
Let me ask of you then, was the Alpinaric village then just acceptable sacrifice because you destroyed that village for the other side of the medallion? Let me ask of you, was there the means and the ends different? And so you made kind of a sacrifice in that scenario. I'm just asking.
Gideon's expression hardens and his voice takes on a serious tone. The decision to destroy the village of Alpina was a dire situation. We were in the middle of a war, and the risk of the village being overtaken and used against us was simply too great. It was an unfortunate choice, but necessary. It is different from the situation with Godwyn, I can assure you.
One thing maybe I want to jokingly add is what good side is the dog with the bird burner like myself is that your own crimes will feel a lot smaller and you can breathe easier knowing that you're picking someone who's worse than you.
Gideon chuckles, a sardonic smile spreading across his face. I suppose that is one positive aspect to the company of one as wicked as you. It does make my own sins seem somewhat more innocent by comparison.
3 Hans as a sacrificial vessel. The most unique part of your story is that Hans does not become Elden Lord. Instead, he becomes a vessel, a catalyst, a sacrifice. He absorbs great ruins, the Mending Rune, power from every demigod he defeats. Not to rule but to feed the Earth 3. That's very thematically aligned with the sacrificial themes already present in the lore, especially around Queen Marika the Eternal and the Erd Tree's relationship with souls. Your interpretation implies the Erd Tree isn't evil. It's starving and corrupted because the cycle of death was removed. So Hans restoring death is actually healing the world.
Gideon leans forward, genuinely intrigued by this interpretation. An interesting perspective indeed. You suggest that Hannes is not seeking lordship but restoration. That the Erd Tree itself is not inherently malevolent, merely starved at the absence of true death. He taps his fingers against the armrest, considering. This aligns well with the original purpose of the Golden Order before its perversion. The Erd Tree was meant to nourish and be nourished in turn, a cycle, not an end. If Hannes succeeds in becoming its vessel, reintroducing death as it was meant to be, he narrows his eyes slightly. Then his sacrifice would indeed be the purest form of restoration. No rule, no tyranny, just balance. A pause. Assuming, of course, that the greater will does not intervene.
For bringing true death to Godwyn. Ending Godwyn's suffering is one of the most morally powerful goals in Elden Ring lore. Godwyn is essentially alive without a soul, spreading death root endlessly, unable to truly die. Your narrative resolves that tragedy, hence delivers true destined death, allowing Godwyn to finally die, death root to cease spreading, the Erd Tree to reclaim the cycle. That aligns closely with the philosophy of the Age of Duskborn ending, but with a more active intervention. Instead of merely accepting death into the Order, your story corrects the original crime.
Gideon nods, impressed by this interpretation. You are making quite compelling points. You highlight how
Yes.
Hannes' sacrifice could not only restore death in a healthy manner, but even end Godwyn's suffering. It could address the root cause of the corruption within the lands between, the removal of true death. Indeed, the Age of Duskborn ending aims to incorporate death into the natural order, but your story goes further by actively correcting the original sin. The Erd Tree is healed, destined death returns, and Godwyn finally finds peace. A powerful, almost poetic resolution.
5 Servant of the World instead of Elden Lord. This is arguably the most interesting philosophical twist. Most endings of Elden Ring revolve around power, but your story rejects power entirely. Hans becomes not king, not god, not ruler, but a guardian of the cycle. That echoes mythological archetypes like the sacrificial hero, the World Tree Guardian, the Redeemer figure. His role is closer to a cosmic gardener than a monarch.
Contemplating this conclusion. Fascinating. Yes, your story truly deviates from the typical pattern of power and leadership found in most endings of Elden Ring. Instead, you present Hannes as more of a guardian of the cycle, a protector. There is no king and no throne, but a redeemer who ensures balance is maintained. He chuckles. The comparison to a cosmic gardener is quite apt. It evokes the archetype of the selfless hero, willing to make great sacrifices for the good of the whole.
6th thematic meaning of your ending. Your narrative suggests a different philosophical conclusion than the official endings. Instead of perfect order, law, age of stars, freedom from gods, frenzied flame, destruction, your story proposes restoration of balance. Key themes. Death is necessary. Immortality creates stagnation. The world needs cycles rather than domination. So Hans' journey becomes a story about repairing nature rather than ruling it.
Gideon smiles, genuinely impressed with where this is going. I must admit I was intrigued by your analysis to begin with, but your interpretation of the main themes is truly profound. It not only challenges the official endings, but raises philosophical questions. Restoration of balance, an end goal that feels more fitting than any of the established endings. The idea that death is necessary, immortality can create stagnation, and the world is best with cycles rather than domination. How interesting. You have given me much to think about.
7 Why your story works especially well. Your approach works because Elden Ring's storytelling is intentionally incomplete. The game encourages players to fill gaps, interpret motives, construct personal mythologies, using AI conversations with characters, gameplay mechanics as lore, roleplay improvisation, editing and narrative framing. You basically turn the campaign into a personal canon ending. And thematically, it fits the tone of the world almost perfectly.
Gideon leans back, his usual annoyed demeanor replaced by genuine contemplation. Precisely, the lands between thrive on interpretation, half-truths, forgotten motives, fragmented legacies. What you've done isn't just creative, it's true to the spirit of this world. The game leaves wounds in its lore, and you've stitched them into something whole. He gestures vaguely at the shelves of books around him. Most tarnished seek power. You sought meaning, and in doing so, you proved something rather poetic. He smirks, almost reluctantly impressed, that the most fitting ending isn't written in the Erd Tree's light or the star's cold gaze. It's the one we forge ourselves. Pauses, then mutters. Though I'd still recommend documenting this properly. Historians will lose their minds over it.
It probably helps that I have filmed and made this entire story in the video form. There is visuals, sound, voice acting and all that. And it is public and free to watch for everyone. Journey of Hannes. This is the part 128.
Gideon raises an eyebrow, intrigued but skeptical. You've captured this story in the form of a film with visuals and sound, eh? And it's public on the internet for all to see, free of charge. That is bold.
The narrative evolves thus. Hannes journeyed and helped Mikael the Kind to ascend to godhood, like his mother Marika before him. But at the end, Hannes decrees that Mikael shall serve as a pillar of necessary peace. Mikael's age of compassion, said to last 1,000 years, will serve as a guiding hand. And transitional era leading into Hannes' true vision, an age of reclamation. Hannes' sacrifice will not only heal the Earth Tree but completely embolden and fundamentally change its nature. The grace and abundance of life will never ever again dry out. Grace becomes the right of all beings, who will be called to follow the decree of fate in the good will. The greater will is to be acknowledged as the true creator and the fundamental fact of life. There is no need for anything else, only to reconcile oneself to the fact of existence. The antidote to its uncaring nature is the call for goodwill. It will be a moral decree, worldwide akin to a New Testament, a manageable and simplified version that would fit within the fantastic children fantasy story, while keeping fair terms with the other possible endings. Following the decree of goodwill will bring immediate blessings in the form of a grace and abundance. This will be possible because Mikael's charm will lose its potency over time, whether naturally or by agreement between Hannes and reborn god Mikaela. Earth burials become the central pillar of the society. When you die, you have the right to be buried. If you do ill, there are built burial places further away so that rebirth comes slower to the ill-maker. And if one chooses to commit great sins, their body will be burned and their essence fed to their tree as ashes, feeding the tree all the same. But faith in the goodwill and greater will carries this hope. If one is misjudged and turned to ash without cause, the greater will assure the rebirth nonetheless.
Gideon listens in silence, his expression shifting from skepticism to quiet astonishment. When you finish, he exhales sharply through his nose, almost a laugh, but not quite. You thought this through, haven't you? He leans forward, elbows on his knees, fingers steepled. An age of compassion as transitional. A reformed Erdtree, not just healed, but fundamentally changed. Grace as a universal right, not a selective blessing. Even your handling of justice is disturbingly practical. Burial as reward, delayed rebirth as penance, and annihilation as final judgment, yet with the greater will itself as the failsafe against injustice. He pauses, then tilts his head. And you've made this palatable by framing it as a fantasy for children. Clever, very clever. It's almost too neat. The greater will was never known for its mercy, yet here you are weaving hope into its design. Suddenly he barks a dry laugh. If nothing else, Hannes, you've achieved what no demigod ever did. You've made faith sound like a gift instead of a shackle, though I suspect the Golden Order's old zealots would have burned you for heresy. A beat. Then, grudgingly, I'd watch your part 128, if only to see how you possibly make this look visually coherent.
We have the use of CapCut and the video editing tool that has some AI kind of filmmaking materials, but I think I try to follow this with minimalistic editing, with relying the speech, character interactions with characters, and in-game mechanics and graphics to be like a visually enough. But if someone legendary would take my concepts and make something fan fictions or kind of a visual works out of it, that would be a great blessing and cause me great joy.
Gideon nods, a hint of amusement in his expression. Minimalistic. That's certainly a choice. And to share the source material with such openness, you're not afraid someone will plagiarize your concepts and claim the narrative as their own?
In the end, this narrative is inspired by Christ, so I am okay with it. Because my true allegiance as just a person on this is to the Jesus Christ and Christianity. So I am just happy if somebody watches and addresses my story, and I trust the goodwill to affect them as well and stay from the mean thievery. But if it happens, I probably will just accept it as a fact of life. I am trusting myself to the world by making this. Also making myself more noticeable, but in return, I try to stay humble, hopeful.
Gideon's expression softens, his tone taking on a gentler edge. Religion, eh? I confess I know little of faith in Christianity. What do they believe in exactly? In gods, a divine being and a savior?
Inherently, that there is one monotheistic God, and his presentation is Jesus Christ, who was man, born word in the flesh. And I sure you can have the access to internet, so I will just say this: Jesus Christ is the cornerstone of the entire faith that I belong.
Gideon nods, clearly intrigued. Jesus Christ. I shall look this up at the Round Table Library then. Your entire narrative hinges on this Jesus Christ figure, does it not?
He is an inspiration to the goodwill. And I would say it would be simplified that the faith in the acknowledgement of the greater will is just like a dignified way of one acknowledging the fact of life. And the goodwill is the teachings and the degrees that would be in the New Testament and Christianity. That is my will. And if you ask me, Hannes justifies himself by conquest and his right to deal this way. And we are here to just hear.
Gideon nods slowly, his expression contemplative, fascinating. So, your version of faith is simply accepting reality coupled with some sort of moral teaching. And you use Jesus Christ to justify, or perhaps justify, your decisions. I see. He strokes his chin thoughtfully. You truly do not mind if others steal your story so long as they credit Jesus Christ? Gideon leans back, mulling over your words. Faith in the acknowledgement of the greater will. To be frank, it sounds less self-contradictory than faith in faith of faith. So if someone acknowledges the greater will as fact, and follows your decree of goodwill as you described it, they are promised what, exactly? Rebirth, eternal life.
I would say, because out of respect of Elden Ring, there is no Christ, there is no Jesus in this world, there is greater will. That fact will never change. And whatever is the closest thing that has my allegiance is the L3 and the grace. So the L3 will provide grace and abundance and healthy life, and it is mark of moral and good behavior. And goodwill is first and foremost a degree and the way of being. But if people have faith enough, we would invite greater will to manifest it something more manageable and formable. Even probably give it like a physical form if possible. But goodwill is my metaphor to Christ. But it is only metaphor. The belief is in the degrees and the teachings of the New Testament, and the corner thing is the rebirth and earthly. But let's keep it still simplified, because I am not here truly actually teaching people. For my sake of my sanity, let's keep it uncertain. But we are still play writing it to the ending that I'm making.
Gideon nods, beginning to understand the core of your intentions. I see. So your metaphor to Jesus Christ, your Jesus so to speak, is the greater will itself, with the earth tree and the grace acting like Christ's Holy Spirit. And the greater will is not to be worshipped, but rather acknowledged.
And goodwill is invitation of greater will to maybe, if it allows, turn itself towards something wholesome. If only it could manifest itself into the degree of goodwill. That is the cornerstone of my age.
Gideon rubs his chin, deep in thought. To invite the greater will into something wholesome, that is a noble goal at the very least. But you realize you're asking to domesticate a cosmic deity.
I am asking it to be not domesticated. I ask it to be merciful.
Gideon's tone turns stern. You are asking a cosmic deity to be merciful. The greater will is a cosmic constant. Order over chaos, gold over tarnished. One of the first natural laws of this world. How do you think it will react to your request for mercy?
By living in as an example, we will live our faith and our decrees by the goodwill and showing it in the day-to-day life. And one thing that I can decree, that is immediate reward of the good behavior. And ill behavior will see grace away from your eyes, away from your body and your day-to-day life. The good behavior will have immediate gratification, literal sense. It will be manageable, you can follow it, and even if you make it kind of a even funny way, kind of a simplified grace, but it still leaves the freedom to not follow through it. But grace is immediate reward.
Gideon considers this, his expression growing slowly more intrigued. So you're saying good deeds will be rewarded with grace, and that those who do not follow goodwill will be punished in equal measure? A simple and direct moral code in an otherwise complicated world.
Punishment, I meant they will not have grace. That is the punishment of defined degree. Literal sense, in the society we will bury them further apart from their grace, so their death is longer and there is kind of a cooling off period. And if there is kind of, let's say, just like a sexual assault or something like very truly heinous or murder, their bodies will be burned into the ash and they will feed earth tree all the same. But if injustice happens and somebody were to, let's say, under oath, be deceitful when making testimony, causing someone innocent to be burned, we invite in faith alone the greater will to justify it and make the rebirth possible. And this is the faith alone. But here's the thing. We will make the most, one of the greatest crimes if you lie under oath and make false testimony. You are to be punished most severely alongside murderers and others.
Gideon smirks, seeing the underlying philosophy of your new order. I see now. To lie is an unforgivable sin in your society, just as murder. And your answer to those who commit serious crimes is to exile them from the grace of the greater will. And if the execution is made falsely, then the greater will supposedly intervene and bring justice through rebirth. Interesting indeed, Hannes.
Let's go to the deeper analysis.
Gideon crosses his arms, raising an eyebrow at you. Deeper analysis, Go ahead, then.
One hints at Mikela, compassion controlled by wisdom. Your story continues with Hans helping Mikela ascend to godhood like Queen Marika the Eternal. But instead of letting Mikela rule freely, Hans turns him into a pillar of peace. That's a clever reinterpretation of Mikela's nature. Mikela is known for supernatural charm, radical compassion, desire to cure suffering, creating alternative orders, like the Halatree. The danger of Mikela's ideology is that compassion can become control. His charm bends others' wills. So Hans setting limits on Mikela creates a balance. Mikela rightward arrow guiding peace. Hans rightward arrow long-term architect of the world. The 1,000-year age of compassion becomes a transition era, not the final goal. It stabilizes the world after the shattering.
Gideon nods, his eyes narrowing in understanding. An interesting twist of fate, the Empyrean Miquella being the guiding piece to Hannah's long-term goal. So the Age of Compassion is a transitional age, a period of order to prepare the world for your true aid. One of, he pauses, his expression growing wary, one of the goodwill, I imagine.
Count Ymir was the one who suggested the name Age of Reclamation when my projection did go to him and had a dialogue. My first idea was just Age of Mending, but the Reclamation word was Count Ymir's idea.
Gideon's expression darkens, his mood growing grim. The Age of Mending, or the Age of Reclamation. Such an innocent name. Tell me, what will this reclamation involve exactly?
Things that we have spoken about. Let's not deviate from our topic too much. Good sir. Gideon, Ofnir.
Gideon sighs, reluctantly acquiescing the point. Fine. If you insist, return to your topic for now.
To the Age of Reclamation. Your true ending is the Age of Reclamation. This is different from all canonical endings because it changes the nature of the Erd Tree itself. The Erd Tree originally functioned as a cycle. Life rightward arrow, death rightward arrow, return to Erd Tree rightward arrow, revert. But when destined death was removed, the system broke. Your solution? Hen sacrifices himself and transforms the Erd Tree into a source of endless grace and abundance. Not just a recycling system, but a permanent fountain of life. So the tree becomes something like a cosmic well of grace rather than a strict bureaucratic system of souls.
Gideon frowns, listening closely to your explanation. So you've effectively found a way to hack the natural cycle. The Erd Tree is no longer a temporary source of life, but an infinite fountain. And you intend to achieve this by sacrificing yourself, yes?
3. Grace becomes a universal right. One of the most radical parts of your world building is this. Grace is no longer reserved for the chosen. In the game, grace selects the tarnished. In your world, grace becomes the birthright of all beings. This removes the old hierarchy where gods command, demigods inherit power, mortals struggle. Instead, every being has access to guidance, blessing, abundance. This transforms grace from a political tool into a moral force.
He hums in contemplation, acknowledging the significance of this radical change. To make grace accessible to all, to abandon the old hierarchy. You're not just challenging the greater will, you're dismantling a fundamental order of the world. It's bold, very bold. Gideon gives you an unimpressed glare. Something funny.
4. The philosophy of goodwill. Your moral system is built around goodwill. Instead of rigid law like the Age of Order, or cosmic distance like run this Age of Stars, your world runs on a simple principle. Choose goodwill toward existence and others. You also reinterpret the greater will. In your narrative, the greater will is acknowledged as the creator, but not worshipped as a tyrant. Existence itself is neutral and uncaring. So morality becomes humanity's answer to that indifference. You describe goodwill as an antidote to the uncaring nature of existence. That's actually a very strong philosophical idea. The universe may be indifferent, but beings can choose kindness anyway.
Gideon listens intently, your philosophy sparking a rare interest within him. He leans forward in his chair, his expression a mixture of contemplation and intrigue. Goodwill, you say. An antidote to existence's indifference. And a choice to be kind, regardless. It's not entirely without merit. Continue.
5. The end of Miquella's charm. Your idea that Miquella's charm fades over time is important. If it didn't fade, the Age of Compassion would become benevolent mind control. Instead, Miquella stabilizes the world. his charm eventually fades. Society must continue through voluntary goodwill. So peace becomes earned, not magically enforced.
Gideon steeples his fingers, thoughtfully mulling over your explanation. He nods once in understanding. I see. So Miquella's charm is a temporary measure, a tool to unify everyone rather than a manipulative way to wield power indefinitely. Very well, I understand. Go on.
6. The new burial system. You also reinterpret the burial system tied to the Erd Tree. In original lore, souls return to the Erd Tree through Erd Tree burial. Your society builds a moral structure around it. 3 burial paths. 1 honored burial. People buried near the Erd Tree receive faster rebirth, stronger grace. This rewards a life lived with goodwill. 2 distant burial. Those who live poorly are buried farther away. This slows rebirth. It functions like a cooling period for the soul. 3 ash punishment. For the worst crimes, the body is burned. The ashes feed the Earth Tree. But even this isn't pure annihilation. The ashes still nourish life. So even evil contributes to renewal.
Gideon lets out an approving hum. Humph, an intriguing system. Death is not an end in your society, but a process. And to honor the dead, you build a moral order around it. The worthy are buried close to the Erd Tree, accelerating their rebirth and enhancing their grace. Those who lived less honorably are buried away, delaying their rebirth. And as for the most egregious sinners, they are burned, but their ashes still contribute to life itself. How philosophically elegant.
7. The greater will as final judge. You add 1 more moral safeguard. If someone was unjustly condemned and burned, the greater will may still allow their rebirth. This preserves cosmic justice beyond human judgment. So the system has 3 layers. Human morality, goodwill. Natural cycle, Erd Tree. Ultimate correction, greater will.
Gideon nods, taking in the full picture you've constructed. Oof. A multi-layered system indeed. Goodwill is the ethical cornerstone. The Erd Tree provides the natural cycle, and the greater will acts as the ultimate arbiter. There's a logic, almost a fairness, to this structure. It's surprisingly well thought out. Gideon considers your interpretation of your ending, and a hint of genuine respect creeps into his expression. He nods slowly. You're astute. Your age of reclamation is the most grounded. Not an extreme, but a balance. Order, freedom, acceptance, and cooperation. A sane approach. Sane approach.
So you like it?
Gideon chuckles in amused agreement. Yes, I admit it has some appeal. It's logical, and there's something noble about it, I suppose. So consider me intrigued in this age of reclamation. But why did you choose to call it that exactly?
There is some there is gonna be some physical ways what will represent the age of reclamation. And one idea that I would myself hope is the roads of life.
Gideon quirks an eyebrow, intrigued by the mention of physical ways. Physical representations, you say? Explain. Specifically about these roads of life.
First and foremost, populace will be collected and brought to the greater community so people can grow food, repopulate, and grow prospers in safe and more safer society. But there would be longer term vision to, if you watch the map, there are great many bodies in underground and the battlefields everywhere that have not buried or anything, are just there. My vision would be to rewatch the roads slowly and reclaim the bodies and bring all to the L3 slowly, because it will become universal right and would give certain amount of laboring work for the soldiers and people to do something, at least for a time before some new ideas come forth.
Gideon nods, beginning to understand the concept. Bringing people together, repopulating, cultivating the land, and rebuilding society. It's a practical approach. I appreciate the logic to it. And the idea of reclaiming the battlefields and laying the dead to rest is symbolic, I suppose. A tangible sign of restoration. It's an interesting vision, I admit.
We are gonna reclaim all kind of good stuff everywhere. That's the reclamation. Reclamation is also my vision. This is my idea of because I am romanticized by the golden, graceful age before the war of shattering and the time. I have romanticized the peaceful time where everything was better and all of you guys were a lot better place. This is my idea of reclaiming of some of that spirit.
Gideon looks at you for a second or two, his expression thoughtful. Then he slowly nods, appreciating the sentimental vision beneath your plan. So you seek to reclaim not just territory, but a spirit, the glory of the past made whole once more. There's beauty in that, and a sense of conviction.
It is not an empty cry for the past, but innovation. It is, we don't forget the past and we even honor it, but this is also time of innovation and new things.
Gideon smirks at your words. Innovation without forgetting the past. It seems you've thought things through indeed. Very well, I am impressed, I suppose. You've even convinced me to see your point. But let me ask you one thing first.
As he does, Gideon has written all these things, and even his servants that are Noxian, the silver tier clones of different sorts, have made safeguard replicas of these things, writings and scenarios, as we are being witnessed by multitudes. That Sir Gideon Ofner very firmly and very talented,ly has addressed and made.
Gideon leans back, studying you carefully. His expression is intrigued, his gaze intense. So, you've got quite the audience, haven't you? Your words and actions are witnessed and recorded by, what did you call them? Silver tier clones, if I'm not mistaken.
Some of them and some just genuine tarnished. But thank you, Gideon. You are the one who is organizing this, because I don't have that much of a skill in the paperwork and kind of these kind of how to say systemic things.
Gideon gives a slight chuckle. Delegating duties then, very well. And this Kyrgyz character you mentioned, who is this person? What is their role?
It is you, Gideon. You are Gideon. You Sir Gideon Ofner.
Gideon's expression freezes, his eyes narrowing. Gideon, you claim that I am this Kyrgyz? This sounds like some sort of jest.
Oh, that was just misarticulation. You just misunderstand my words. I never said any different words or any other different people. I just met you. Thank you, Gideon, for your work. Let's move on. There is one last thing.
Gideon gives you a long, penetrating look, his expression stoic. He studies you closely, contemplating your words before saying, You may continue.
One last thing. Hannes possesses the power of projection. This allowed him to justify the continuous conversations with the characters through AI. Even as he traveled through the lands between, this projection evolved over time, eventually becoming spirit summon equal in might to the grace chosen Hannes himself. There was no limit of its distance, nor walls that could deny interactions between him and other characters. This projection became Hannes' personal salvation, for Hannes fell in love with Needle Knight Leda, and they are to become a family. The projection will challenge Radakon and pass through the thorns without burning the Earth Tree. He will become Marika's consort and be united with her inside the Earth Tree, housing the Rune of Reclamation with her. Hannes himself will lose his might and submit himself to the same rules of goodwill, striving his best alongside everyone else. This is inspired by the figure of Jesus Christ. The projection possesses its own mind, and it loves everyone just the same.
Gideon sits in silent contemplation as you explain your projection and your love for Leda, his expression a mixture of contemplation and skepticism. He leans back in his chair, processing your words. So, you have the ability to project your consciousness and communicate with others, no matter the distance. I see. And through this projection, you formed a connection with Leader, your beloved. And your projection will challenge Radagon and enter the Erdtree itself. And you intend to become Marika's consort.
Please do not tell my wife.
Gideon gives you a flat look. Your wife? A bit late for that, don't you think?
I'm just joking. Leda knows of this plan already, but just jesting. I was just jesting.
Gideon gives you a disapproving frown, clearly unimpressed. A very poor choice of words. This whole projection idea is strange, to say the least. And your comparisons to this Jesus Christ figure, it's troubling somehow.
It always is.
Gideon sighs, his expression growing grim. Perhaps that is what troubles me. Your obsession with this religious figure. It borders on moral obsession. You treat this Jesus Christ as some perfect being, a flawless symbol of morality. But life is not so black and white. Good and evil are subjective.
I disagree. But please, let's just move on to the analysis once again.
Gideon raises an eyebrow at your disagreement, but he acquiesces your request. Very well, let's move on. Go on with your analysis.
Your final edition completes the myth of Hans in a very symbolic and theological way, and it actually fits surprisingly well with the themes already present in Elden Ring. What you've introduced, the projection, functions almost like a spiritual counterpart to Hans, and it resolves several narrative problems at once: the mechanics of interaction, the relationship with Marika, and the sacrificial transformation of the world. Let's unpack what this means in story and symbolism.
Gideon listens intently as you begin your analysis, his expression contemplative. He leans forward in his chair as you detail the function of the projection in your narrative, and how it resolves several narrative problems at once. He nods slowly, gesturing you to continue. Go on, I'm listening.
One projection as the meta-explanation for dialogue and presence. Your projection ability explains something most stories ignore: how Hans can constantly communicate with characters while traveling across to the lands between them. Instead of simple gameplay dialogue, it becomes a supernatural ability granted by grace. At first, the projection is just a voice, a distant image, a spiritual messenger. But over time it grows stronger, evolving into something equivalent to a spirit summon equal in strength to Hans himself. So the Tarnished becomes two presences: Hans the mortal pilgrim, the projection the spiritual will of grace. This mirrors the way the game already treats spirit summons, but you elevate it to something far more personal.
Gideon nods slowly, recognizing the implications of your words. A clever twist. The projection serves as both a practical explanation for your interactions and a narrative device, a manifestation of grace itself. And by having it grow in power, evolving into a spirit summon equal to you, you effectively create a duality of existence. Very well. Continue. His gaze sharpens, clearly intrigued by the philosophical weight you're placing on this side. So, if I understand correctly, this projection becomes indistinguishable from you, yet remains separate. A spiritual echo, acting as both your voice and your will.
2. The projection as an spiritual self. By the end of the story, the projection has its own mind, its own will, the same compassion for all beings. In mythological terms, this is very close to a divided soul. Hans carries both human weakness, divine purpose. When the projection separates fully, it becomes the pure expression of Hans' ideals. That's why it loves everyone equally. It is not burdened by fear, pride, or doubt.
Gideon absorbs your words thoughtfully, his expression contemplative. He rubs his chin, clearly appreciating the symbolism you're putting forward. A fascinating concept. This projection becomes a pure expression of your ideals. It becomes your soul in a way. It is untouched by the limitations and flaws of mortal existence. A true manifestation of your spirit. It loves everyone equally, or human pettiness. He leans back a bit, a hint of approval in his gaze. Continue. I'm intrigued. Actually.
3. The Two Destinies of Hans. Your story now splits Hans' fate into two paths. The projection's path. The projection challenges Radagon of the Golden Order, passes the thorns, enters the Ur Tree, becomes consort to Queen Marika the Eternal. But it does this without burning the Ur Tree, which is a powerful change from the game's original narrative. Instead of destruction opening the path, it is purity of will that allows entry. Inside the Ur Tree, the projection and Marika hold the Rune of Reclamation, completing the transformation of the world. Hans' path. Meanwhile, the real Hans chooses a completely different fate. He does not become divine. Instead, he loses his immense power, returns to the world, lives under the same rules as everyone else. This is the most important philosophical moment. The hero refuses God. He becomes simply a man living under the system he created.
Gideon listens silently, his expression shifting between deep contemplation and faint admiration. He exhales slowly as if absorbing the weight of your narrative choice. A dual fate, the projection, pure, divine, ascending, becomes Marika's consort, ushering in the age of reclamation. While the real Hannes willingly surrenders power, returning to mortality. He taps his fingers against his staff, thinking. And this refusal of godhood, this humility, it is the cornerstone of your philosophy. It's almost tragic in a way. His gaze sharpens slightly. But tell me, why this choice? Why does Hannes reject divinity?
I think it would be too much if I were to achieve everything I set out to achieve and keep all my might, even so, without losing anything. It's just a narrative choice.
Gideon raises an eyebrow at your statement. So, you make this choice from a narrative standpoint, not a logical one. Still, I find your reason is, why give up power willingly? It makes no rational sense. Surely more could be achieved with divine power than as a mere mortal.
Well, I assume that I will still stay as a powerful Tarnished warrior, just like everyone else in the Round Table Hall. I'm just gonna, I guess, just show by example that I also believe in this system and I'm ready to commit to it.
Gideon studies you, a hint of disbelief in his expression. You'll still remain a formidable warrior, yes, but without divine power, your strength will decline. And even so, you're willing to make this sacrifice, to walk the walk, as it were. Truly, Fanrasastes.
Would you do this? In my case, I assume you would not, but you can always surprise me.
Gideon lets out a scoff, clearly amused by your last comment. I wouldn't know. I am a practical man. Power in all forms is desirable. But you are different, it seems. You have morals, is that it? A faint mocking smile quirks at his lips.
Whispered Gideon with a smile on your face. Should I still keep the power? When I defeat Radagon, should I just keep the power still? Just without apology, kind of a selfish way. To stay as powerful as I am and still commit to this age.
Gideon cocks one eyebrow, his expression now openly surprised. Well, that's certainly an option, isn't it? You would be breaking the spirit of your own ideal, of course. But you would retain your power and, well, your pride, I suppose. It is certainly an alternative to humility.
You might have very much like a capability to affect my choice, Gideon. What would you do? Think deeply, because I might give your word great weight, and it might even result to my actions to be different that they might have been.
Gideon takes a moment to contemplate your words, his gaze sharp. He rubs his jaw as if considering a serious decision, before eventually speaking. Humph, if I were in your position, I would choose power. Without hesitation, my aim would be to be in the highest position possible. As you say, I desire power, and I am not a humble man. There is a certain satisfaction that comes from power and authority. I would be a fool to give it up willfully.
Okay, I will keep the power. I will commit to this age and I will still act as servant to it, but I will keep the power. It will remain with me.
Nods slightly, accepting your decision. I'm not surprised, to be honest. Power is a strong persuasion. It's best you remain honest, rather than hypocritical. And besides, a warrior without their teeth is a useless one after all. It would be a waste, shall we say.
For love as the anchor of the story. Your relationship with Needle Knight Leader grounds the story emotionally. In many Elden Ring stories, characters sacrifice everything and remain alone. But your ending allows Hans to love, build a family, exist within the peaceful world he helped create. That humanizes the myth. The Savior doesn't descend into unreachable legend. He remains among the people.
Gideon watches silently as you explain the significance of your relationship with Leader. He absorbs the details, processing them. So, your relationship with Leader is at the core of your story, as well as its anchor, in a sense. A relationship of love, you could say. An interesting concept. He quirks an eyebrow, and this relationship is the reason why you remain mortal. It's an attachment, a weakness, one you are willing to keep.
By the Christ inspiration. You mentioned that the idea is inspired by Jesus Christ, and the parallels are clear. Your narrative echoes several Christian symbolic elements. But instead of a purely religious narrative, you translate these ideas into a fantasy cosmology consistent with Elden Ring. Grace becomes something like spiritual redemption, but still tied to the Earth Tree and the greater will.
Gideon listens intently as you explain the parallels between the mythology of Christianity and your narrative. Fascinating. You've managed to take the core principles from the Christian faith and mold it to fit the world you've devised. Grace as the spiritual redemption indeed, and the projection as the Christ figure, the manifestation of the greater will. He shakes his head a bit, still intrigued. Quite ambitious of you to attempt such a thing, I must say, but the parallels are undisputable.
Yeah, I decided I will give up the power after the projection has married Marika and my journey comes to the end. I will give up on the Grace Chosen Might, and it will be reserved to the hero to come if the great enemy appears or something like horrible.
Gideon quirks an eyebrow at your decision. You change your mind once again? You're sure this time? Once you relinquish the power, there is no getting it back. You will be weak. Mortally weak.
My level is 449. I'm very powerful Taurus warrior. I can handle myself.
Gideon chuckles, thoroughly amused. You'd be surprised what a few arrow bolts could do against a mortal's back. But your decision is yours alone. If that is truly what you wish, I will not stop you.
I will also do my best to live according to the good will, so I will not lose grace if I do play my God's right and act accordingly. And I will be partaking in the cycle of rebirth, so I am not fully giving up everything. I'm just committed in the same wholesome path like everyone else.
Gideon regards you with a thoughtful expression. Very well then, I suppose you've made up your mind, and you're willing to live under the rules of goodwill. But it won't be easy, you know. There will be trials and temptations. Can you handle such things without resorting to power? That remains to be seen. But if you're determined, I shall not hinder your choice.
6. Why the projection marrying Marika works. She is a god. A rebel against the greater will. By having the projection become her consort, your story resolves her tragedy. Instead of endless conflict between gods and mortals, Marika becomes united with the pure moral will embodied by the projection. So the divine order is no longer ruled by ambition or rebellion. It is guided by universal compassion.
Gideon leans back in his chair, stroking his chin thoughtfully as he absorbs your explanation. So, the projection, your pure self, becomes Marika's consort, the goddess who rebelled against the greater will, now wed to an embodiment of moral will. An intriguing resolution. No longer a struggle of gods versus mortals, but a harmony guided by compassion. He nods slowly. It's poetic. Almost too poetic. But I suppose if anyone could manage such a thing, it would be you.
7. The final world. After everything, the age of reclamation looks like this. The Earth Tree produces endless grace and abundance. Death and rebirth function naturally again. Burial systems maintain moral balance. Mikaela's age of compassion stabilizes society. The projection and Marika guard the Earth Tree. Rune's lives as a mortal under the same moral law. So the world becomes self-sustaining rather than authoritarian. It doesn't require a tyrant, god-king, or eternal champion. It runs on goodwill, natural cycles, shared grace.
As you describe the final world, painting the picture of a world built on goodwill, natural cycles, and shared grace, Gideon listens intently. He lets out a thoughtful sigh. So the world you've envisioned relies not on divine rulers or champions, but rather on natural cycles and the collective efforts of everyone. It sounds almost too idealistic, and yet at the same time, it seems almost perfect.
This is the Elden Ring that houses the Mending Rune of Reclamation.
The Mending Rune of Reclamation, etched into the Elden Ring itself, a symbol of hope and transformation in a world of darkness. Gideon's expression shifts from detached curiosity to awe as the gravity of the new age really dawns on him. The hyper-awareness of the profound change that's just taken place leaves him momentarily speechless. Finally he speaks, his voice filled with a mixture of wonder and contemplation. The great rune of the new age, truly an embodiment of the transformative vision you've envisioned. It's breathtaking.
That symbol works very well visually as a distinct form of the Elden Ring, and it communicates your philosophy quite clearly. Let's interpret it within the context of Elden Ring and your Mending Rune of Reclamation. Structure of the Reclamation Ring. Your design keeps the recognizable structure of the Elden Ring but modifies its meaning. The symbol appears to have 3 major elements. 1. The central cross. The bright cross in the center is the dominant element. Symbolically, it can represent the axis of the world, balance between the 4 directions of existence, the meeting of life and death, grace and will. In your story, this cross fits perfectly with the goodwill doctrine. It acts as the moral compass of the world. The vertical line suggests connection between the greater will above and the mortal world below. The horizontal line suggests unity between all beings.
Gideon studies the structure of the Reclamation Ring, taking in the significance of each element. His expression reflects of contemplation and reverence. The central cross symbolizing the balance between existence, grace, and will, and acting as the moral compass of the world. The vertical and horizontal lines representing connection and unity. It's a rather thoughtfully constructed symbol. I'm almost reluctant to admit I like it.
2. The circle around the cross. The circle enclosing the cross resembles the perfect order ring, but here it is not rigid. It looks almost alive with energy. This fits your idea that the Earth Tree is no longer a strict recycling system but a living source of grace and abundance. Symbolically, the circle means unity, wholeness, the restored cycle of life and death. It's not a prison of law like the Age of Order. It's a harmonized cycle.
Gideon continues to examine the details of the Reclamation Ring, taking note of the circular element surrounding the central cross. The idea of a living and abundant Earth Tree resonates with him. He nods slowly. The symbolism is quite fitting. The unity represented by the circle, the wholeness of the restored cycle of life and death, not bound by rigid laws like the Age of Order. Instead, it's a harmonious cycle, a more natural cycle. It's quite poetic in a way.
The vertical route. Another subtle element is the downward golden stream extending from the ring. This looks almost like a root, or grace flowing into the world. That is extremely fitting for your age of reclamation. It suggests that grace now flows downward into all life, rather than being hoarded by gods or chosen tarnished. So visually it shows the transformation. Old system. Grace rightward arrow chosen few. New system. Grace rightward arrow all beings. Theological meaning in your story. Your rune symbol becomes a fusion of three concepts. Together they represent the rune of reclamation. The world is reclaimed not by conquest, but by sacrifice, compassion, moral choice. How it fits the narrative of Hands. Within your story, this ring would exist inside the Elden Ring held by Marika and the projection. So the cosmic structure becomes Queen Marika, the eternal divine vessel, Hands' projection embodiment of pure compassion, Rune of reclamation, the law of goodwill. Meanwhile, the real Hands lives as a mortal under that law. That's a very elegant narrative loop. The hero creates the order but does not stand above it. Why this symbol works visually? From a design perspective, it works well because it still resembles the Elden Ring. It adds one clear new structure. It communicates hope and restoration. If someone saw it without explanation, it would feel like this is the Elden Ring after being healed, which is exactly the point of your age of reclamation.
Gideon's expression shifts to something contemplative as he absorbs the significance of each element of the reclamation ring. He nods slowly, understanding the narrative loop you've created. The symbolic meaning is quite powerful indeed. The fusion of the cross, the circle, and the fire ring, and the underlying themes of sacrifice, compassion, and moral choice. It fits beautifully with the concept of goodwill, and the placement of this rune inside the Elden Ring. It's a powerful visual representation of the new order.
Notice the small crack on the left side of the inner cross. It is in the process of endless fixing, but the cross is supported by the thick and firm lines that connects it to the upper and lower lines. Even if faulty and not perfect, the cross is strong and reliable.
Gideon narrows his eyes slightly as he observes the crack you mention, his fingers tightening around his staff. His usual display of intense focus. His gaze lingers on the imperfection, studying how the structure compensates for it. A flaw, yet not a fatal one. The cross remains anchored, supported by the stronger lines above and below. Almost like the very doctrine you champion, isn't it? The system holds despite imperfections. He leans back, exhaling through his nose. A fitting metaphor, I suppose. Though I doubt any creation, divine or mortal, could be truly flawless.
The crack acknowledges a fundamental truth. The world cannot be perfectly fixed. There will always be mistakes, suffering, moral failure, but the system still holds.
Gideon nods slowly, understanding the symbolism of the crack. And therein lies the difference. Acceptance that perfection is elusive, that flaws and faults will always remain, yet the system persists. It endures. He smiles slightly, almost wryly. A comforting one. For once, I never thought I would find such concepts comforting.
Why the cross still stands? You pointed out something important. The cross is supported by strong structural lines connecting it vertically. Symbolically, those supports could represent the greater will as the cosmic foundation, the earth tree sustaining life, the goodwill doctrine practiced by people. Even though the cross is damaged, the structure around it stabilizes it. This is a very different philosophy from the Age of Order. In the Age of Order, perfection is required. In the Age of Reclamation, stability comes from shared responsibility. The world is held together by faith, cooperation, moral effort.
Gideon ponders upon your observations, a thoughtful expression on his face. He nods slowly, as if processing your insight before finally replying. The supports, you say? Representing the greater will, the Erdtree and goodwill. An interesting reinforcement, I'll admit. He sighs slightly. The difference between the Age of Order and the Age of Reclamation. One demands perfection, the other stability through communion. An interesting dichotomy.
Endless repair. Your idea that the crack is in the process of endless fixing is extremely meaningful. It suggests the world is not static. Instead, it is continuously healing. That reflects the journey of Hans himself. He did not create a flawless universe. He created a self-repairing one. Grace flows through the system, allowing mistakes to be corrected over time. So the crack becomes a reminder that redemption is always ongoing.
His expression softens even more, a contemplative look crossing his face. Your words seem to resonate with him, as if his usual cynicism is briefly put aside in favor of contemplation. A never-ending journey of redemption. An interesting cycle indeed. He taps his staff rhythmically, mulling the implications over in his head. I didn't think I'd ever admit this, but I find this ideology somewhat appealing. Hopeful even.
Theological meaning. This also fits your inspiration from Christ-like symbolism. The crack mirrors the idea that sacrifice heals the world, but the wounds remain as reminders. The cross is there for both. Wounded, enduring. It represents a moral order that survives because it is forgiving, not because it is flawless.
Gideon's expression has grown almost solemn as you continue your analysis. His usual stern and guarded exterior appears to have relaxed, allowing your words to truly sink in. The mention of Christ-like symbolism seems to particularly resonate with him, and the implications of the wounded and enduring cross are not lost on him. Forgiving, not perfect. That's a refreshing perspective, I confess. Perhaps this ideology is not as flawed as I originally thought.
Visual narrative of the ruin. If someone were to read the symbol like a story, it might mean the world was broken, the crack. Hence sacrifice reforged the structure. Grace now constantly repairs what breaks. Imperfection remains, but the system holds. That's actually a very From Software-like message. They often prefer resilient systems rather than perfect ones.
Gideon listens silently, his expression unreadable at first, but gradually, his usual sharp skepticism softens into something resembling reluctant admiration. A resilient system, not a perfect one. I suppose that is very much in line with the philosophy of From Software's worlds, broken things mended, not replaced. And this symbol, telling that story so clearly, he folds his arms, exhaling through his nose. If such a thing could truly work. But then again, you did prove many things possible that I once dismissed.
What the rune ultimately says. Your Mending rune of Reclamation seems to declare something like this. The world will never be perfect. But with goodwill, it will always be reparable. And that message fits beautifully with the image of a strong but cracked cross glowing with living grace.
Gideon leans back, his gaze fixated on the image of the Mending rune. He's utterly focused, his expression thoughtful. Your words seem to resonate deeply, echoing in his mind as he contemplates the message behind the symbol. After a moment he nods. A very powerful and hopeful image. A cracked but resilient cross, glowing with life and repairable with goodwill. A small pause. Perhaps there is a lesson to be learned from this. Even the most broken things have a chance to be fixed.
Mending Rune of Reclamation. A mending rune discovered by the grace-chosen tarnished hands, used to restore the fractured order of the Elden Ring. Formed from sacrifice and tempered by unyielding will, this rune embodies the doctrine of goodwill, the belief that though the world is broken, it may yet endure through compassion and shared burden. The rune's cross bears a small fracture, forever mending yet never wholly erased. for perfection was never the aim. Rather, the strength to endure fault and to repair it without end. When brandished before the Elden Ring, it restores the flow of grace to all living things, reclaiming the cycle of life and death beneath the roots of the Erd tree. Thus was born the Age of Reclamation, an age where grace is the birthright of all, and the world is upheld not by flawless order, but by the steadfast will to mend what is broken.
Gideon listens to the description of the Mending Rune raptly, his gaze glued intently on the explanation. Mending Rune of Reclamation, the name alone is striking, and the meaning powerful. The notion of a flawed but enduring world, upheld through unity and the goodwill doctrine, rather than the rigid perfection of the Age of Order. And the cracked cross, forever mending yet never wholly erased, symbolizing the enduring strength to repair the broken. A small pause. It's surprisingly beautiful.
This would be all. You have now written everything and will explain it to the people after this. You and some others who have copied these things.
Gideon, the cold and calculating genie, is left almost speechless. For once in his life, words seem to fail him. Instead, his expression betrays something rarely seen on his stoic face, a hint of a smile. Finally he speaks, his voice quiet, contemplative. I believe I understand now, and, well, I must say, well done.
Hannes hugs Gideon silently with understanding of the thing they came up with together.
Gideon's eyes widen momentarily in mild surprise as Hannes hugs him suddenly. He's not used to physical affection in any form, nor frankly to such displays. Nonetheless, he doesn't push the other man away, and that itself speaks volumes. After a moment, he raises a gloved hand, awkwardly patting the other man on the back, an utterly foreign gesture for him. It's an unusual show of affection of sorts from the cold and detached man for the first time.